the significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, I'm often told, I often hear from Christians who say, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they really took us much further back in time. Got much earlier manuscripts, and it confirms the Old Testament we always had. It's the same books, the same content. Isaiah's just the same. Jeremiah's just the same. Is this true or not? I mean, what's really going on here? Or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, no, it's a very important thing. The Dead Sea Scrolls are hugely important for all sorts of reasons. Not just the copies of the Bible, by the way, but also they tell us a lot about this group of Jews who were in these kind of monastic-like communities, the Essenes. But some of the Dead Sea Scrolls are biblical manuscripts, and they were a huge find. The reason is because the Hebrew Bible that we use today, the people who use the Hebrew Bible actually in Hebrew and that are translating the Hebrew Bible, are basing their translations on a manuscript that was written around the year 1000 of the Common Era. Around 1000 of the Common Era. It came from Leningrad, and so it's called Codex Leningradensis. Jewish scribes in the Middle Ages, when they copied a manuscript, they would destroy it because now they had a perfect copy of it, and they made sure the copy was perfect. They had ways of doing that through the Middle Ages. The problem is, what were scribes doing before the Middle Ages, before they had these rules? Well, we had to guess that they were getting it right. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, and they include portions of every book of the Hebrew Bible except for the book of Esther. Esther? Yeah. Because it turns out God is not named in Esther, and so that for some reason that book's not among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Most of the scrolls we have are not complete scrolls. The Isaiah scroll is virtually a complete scroll, and it is very, very close in wording to the Codex Leningradensis.
Right. So that confirms the Bible we have today was historically accurate. It was accurately and reliably transmitted.
No. It's got nothing to do with it. And so I need to explain several things here because there's several points that some people overlook, which is the first one people overlook. That's true of the Isaiah scroll, but it's not true of other Dead Sea Scrolls. There are other Dead Sea Scrolls. The scroll of Jeremiah that we have has differences from our Jeremiah, and the differences from our Jeremiah are like the differences that come to us from the Greek translation of Jeremiah in the Septuagint, in the Greek Bible. That version of Jeremiah is 15% shorter than the Leningradensis. 15%. So that's not very accurate. And so it's not that everything is like the Isaiah scroll. The Isaiah scroll is like the Isaiah scroll, but it doesn't prove.
That's why it's always mentioned, it's always showcased. Oh, look at Isaiah. Isaiah is exactly the same. Look at the perfection of transmission, the reliability.
So that's my first point. That this manuscript of Isaiah was written 1,000 years before Leningradensis. It's accurate, but the others are not the same. Exactly. Second point, Isaiah the prophet was writing. Isaiah of Jerusalem was living in the 8th century BCE. That means we don't have any manuscripts for the first over 700 years. So the fact that you have a manuscript that from say the year 1 to the year 1000, you can show that Isaiah was copied accurately. But our question is, what about between the year 700 BCE and 1? No, there's 700 years. We have no evidence in Hebrew, no Hebrew text. So you can't say this is exactly what Isaiah wrote. How would you know how much it got changed between 700 and the Dead Sea Scroll copy? There's no way to know. There are ways, not good ways to know. So that's second. Third thing, even if we had everything that was accurate in either any book of the New Testament or the New Testament or Old Testament, even if we had a manuscript, even if we had the original, suppose we had the original of Mark, or suppose we have the original of Joshua. We have the original. That would have no bearing on the question of whether it's accurate or not. It would only have a bearing on whether we know what the author wrote. So the way I usually illustrate this is we have millions of copies of Mein Kampf. and they are accurate. They might not be accurate with what Hitler actually wrote, but they don't have any differences. We know what the first printed copy looked like. Does that mean that it's accurate? No, it doesn't mean that it's right. It just means you know what he wrote. The fact you know what somebody wrote doesn't mean that what they wrote is right. That's a different thing. So those are three really big points that shows that this argument just doesn't hold. And any one of those three shows that they didn't hold. Three together, forget it. The fact is
it even worse than that? Yeah, is it not worse than that? Because we give the example of Isaiah. It's now commonly accepted that, maybe the first 39 chapters of Isaiah were written by this prophet in Isaiah from downtown Jerusalem. But it was added to by maybe a second scribe or maybe a third scribe or scribes. Yeah. So we don't even if we were to dig up the book of Isaiah that we have it today from 500 years ago or 600 years ago, it doesn't mean we have the prophet Isaiah's own words, which many scholars think were added to anyway.
Yeah, no, it's very common to think that Isaiah, and there's really good reason for this. Isaiah of Jerusalem wrote most of chapter 1 to 39, and then someone 150 years later wrote 40 to 55, then the other 56 and on. And so, it's a compilation, no matter what. But even if you have Isaiah's words, again, it doesn't mean that he's right. He might be right. I mean, he might be, but it's a different question. The fact you have an accurate manuscript is not evidence that what the person said is accurate.